but I am curious to know anyway.
Yeah, it's going all right, thanks. Although it's very, very quiet at the moment, actually, but I'm doing bits and bobs of my own personal
This year's been weird.
writing. It's so weird. And everyone I speak to, I mean, I know my sector particularly is having a rough time. Charities, lots of charities really struggling, some charities closing down, the smaller ones. But actually, everyone I talk to is quiet. LinkedIn just seems to be all work type posting, doesn't it, at the moment?
It's weird. LinkedIn is a sort of a quite a, I was going to say desolate place. I love being on LinkedIn, as you know, and I get most of my work from there. But it is, if you sort of tune in, I think especially to sort of the ad agency space, people are like, I'm getting different jobs, I'm leaving the industry, I worked on this year that was huge, and now I can't find work. It's wild. So what are some of the projects that you're working on and talk about?
That's the tricky thing, isn't it?
Mm.
Latest job was for Teach for All, which is like a kind of international network of teachers and coaches, and I did editing a whole load of their materials, mostly PowerPoints actually, or training sessions for teachers who want to help their students learn systemic biases, other things, and take a coaching approach to their students. So that was my most
Interesting.
recent project. And before that, I was working with UNICEF on their other actually teaching related thing, because it's teaching materials for teaching children
Mm.
about their rights. They have rights respecting schools. You can sign up to be a rights respecting school, and they give you a whole program of themed rights education sessions. So
Yeah.
there's stuff for Blood Cancer UK.
Nice.
So those are my most recent three.
Is it exclusively charities that you're working with? Because I know that has been your experience the last few years. Is that still
Yeah, and that's
what you're
where
at?
I
Yeah.
like work.
Mm.
It's not exclusive, no. I've written about venues and aviation
Mm.
software,
Mm.
kings, and so I
Yeah.
have done private sector stuff. I guess it's like your contacts stay within a similar sector, don't they? And
Yeah.
that is where my interest, because to write good copy, me personally, I have to sort of believe that I'm trying to persuade people to do something that is a good thing for them to do.
Yeah.
So I feel like if I believe in what I'm selling, I
Hmm.
sell much better, and I can sell much better. I can do my job much
Yeah.
better.
100%.
Everybody, I kind of do admire people who can just switch it on, sell anything. I do admire that, but I don't know if I'm really a person.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to not be overall. I mean, so I work with like so many different niches. That said, there are certain like commonalities that I find. So, like, working with marketers or founders of a certain type of business, I can sort of see the golden thread that goes throughout. And then sometimes I'll get a really obscure client in, who I'm like, okay, it's something, and it's something that I don't know about, and I'm like, I'll have a go at it. But sometimes when there's something that's so wildly technical, it's just out of my sphere of like day to day, I'm like, oh, you know what, it's hard going. So I do see the sort of argument for. I know we're not getting into the whole niche or not niche, but I do see why these specialists, like, it makes sense, because like it's just not an efficient way for anyone to work, as you're sort of like wading through if it's part of
Yeah,
your
and I think
vocab.
it's nice to feel like you're working at the top of your game as well, isn't it? Like, and
Yes.
if you know, lovely to learn
Mm.
about new stuff and be like, wow, this is a whole world that I didn't know existed. It's really good fun. And I think if you didn't have that at all, it could get a bit boring. But then obviously you also want that, where you're like, I know this.
Mastery.
I know these people's
Yeah.
lives. I know what's going on here behind the
Yeah.
scenes. I can describe it all without them having to tell me how their day goes, you know?
Yeah. That shorthand.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
But I suppose you could argue that actually, eventually, you can get too comfortable and then you can't speak to an audience who doesn't in that. as well. So
Yeah, I think you can start to make assumptions, can't you? People like us think things like this. Yeah, like sometimes the outside perspective is good, isn't it?
yes, yeah. And you can start to use language that you think everybody uses, but actually they don't, because it's become so familiar to you. Know?
Yeah, yeah, start to go for bullshit. Well, not bullshit, but yeah. I was thinking about this recently because there was a project that came up that I need to hear back from, but it was a part time gig, and I was like, hmm. And I've always said, because I make these sweeping statements idiotically, like I'll never go back to a job. I will always stay freelancing. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm. I think I am cut out for it because I can't imagine being cut out for working in a normal job. But what do you make of it? Do you think you're like cut out for this new? I say new world, the world of freelancing today.
Yeah, it's. I've been thinking exactly the same thing. So I've been freelance this time. I went freelance before and then went back into a job and then went freelance again.
Okay.
This time I have been freelance for about 8 years now.
Mm,
I have loved variety. I have loved the space to control the pace of my work a little bit.
mm,
And I think I feel very similar to you in that I sort of think I don't know if I can ever go back now. Having said that, a normal job now does not look like what
mm.
a normal job looked like when I was in
That's so true.
an office,
Yeah, yeah.
because people don't work together in the same way. I think it's a real
Mm,
shame for younger people who are coming into their careers. They don't have that environment. Everybody that you work with is there.
mm.
Because I feel like I came up through my craft with copyright, because I came from a features writing background, I came from magazines. So when I moved into the charity sector, I was learning marketing writing, learning sort of USPs, and I was learning about dwell time,
Yeah.
kind of calls to action and all of that kind of stuff. And you do it in, like, when you're working in Raspberry, aware that you're doing it. And I learned all
Mm,
of this stuff on the job because I was working with loads of really great people. They were there every day, and I would learn just as much from sitting across the table from them when they were on a call to somebody I would from having a meeting with them.
yeah.
Although I love where we are now, and for me now, flexible working and remote working would be the only way that I could go back into a job. Also think it's, you can see why lots of people do want to be back in the office, especially if you're younger, if you're earlier in your
Yeah.
career.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's true. That whole sort of immersion and just sort of being around it and soaking it in by osmosis. Yeah. I've not ever written I've been a copywriter in an agency. So I started off, I sort of just fell into it by accident. So I've never really had that grounding. And that's why like the various communities that, you can join are helpful because you sort of get that access that you might not have had otherwise. You sort of feel a little bit like you're out there just making it up sometimes.
Yeah, it is, and you can't. Imposter syndrome gets much worse because you can't read people when you're doing good work so
Mm,
often in isolation, and you don't get the body language around you and the noises, and people don't necessarily take the time to say nice things. And it's a
mm,
real skill if you're good at giving nice feedback, real winner, because people like to work with you because you make them feel good if you say the nice things as well as the difficult things, right?
yeah, 100%.
Not everyone is good at that, but I think when you're working with a team and you're doing good work and you're all
Hmm.
buzzing and you're getting that vibe, you know that you're not imagining it. You know that you're doing
Mm, mm.
something that I
Yeah,
think, yeah.
I think that's really true. It's an energy thing, isn't it? I think I also think like giving feedback is like it's a generous act, isn't it? Like even if like you say it's not all positive, it's quite. I mean, it's really you know when I get things signed off, if I get good feedback, that's fantastic. But it's less. It happens less than you'd expect. Sort of full, and everyone has lots of busy jobs to do and lots of different things going on. Sometimes it can feel a little bit like an echo chamber. Okay, right, good, and getting that response.
Yeah,
Um,
constructive, I mean,
mm.
like such cliche, isn't it? it doesn't have to be positive, but a nice balance of literally just saying, I love this line.
Mm.
There's other feedback in there that's really difficult. So much difference. And the feedback that you do get that's critical, if it can be a conversation, it reminds me of improvisation, when they talk about yes and when
Yeah.
you're not allowed to shut the conversation down, you have to continue. It has to be like an open question. So if you're going through your feedback or you're giving feedback, you're kind of like, what, instead of like, I don't like this line,
Mm.
saying like, how can we phrase this so that it will speak to these people more?
Yeah.
I'm getting this feeling from here. What can we do? Do you know what I mean? I think
It's a
it
great tip, yeah.
needs to feel like it's a dialogue, and then it's great because
Hmm.
ultimately you do get to a better product, don't you? You're challenging each other and pushing each other. Not always,
Mm. No, I know what you mean.
but if you to feedback with
Conversation.
open arms, I think you can get to a better place with it.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. I hadn't realised, like, until about, I don't know, a year ago or so. I was like, I don't think everyone knows how to give feedback. And so, like, sometimes when you're working with small business owners or just, I don't know, anyone really, and you deliver something to them, like what I've started doing now is like, hey, so things like this would be useful for me to know. Like, I'm open to all feedback, but these are sort of useful parameters. And that actually helped me receive better guidance because I'm assuming that they know how to feedback. And actually, that in itself is a skill, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you're working with somebody new and it's a small, because I work with a lot of big organisations where my
Mm.
feedback will be 7 different people
Okay, yes.
giving different
Yeah.
comments down the side of my document.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Okay.
guess it's even more important if you're working with one person or you're working with a couple of people, especially if they're new and you don't know them that well yet, is that every piece of feedback should give you an answer to a question that you're curious about. So quite often, if I'm filing copy, quite often file it with a couple of questions on, like, worded this line this way because I think it's going to have this effect. What are you looking for?
Mm.
This and this, or does it feel like your personality? Does it feel like brand?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, does this feel like something you might say?
And I think a lot because also I work in when you work in big stakeholder groups.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you will get stakeholders who will comment on there just because they feel like they can't say they don't have any comments, right? So then,
Yeah.
if you direct them to comment on the bits that you want feedback on, they can go
Mm-hmm.
into the document, answer your questions, and then they feel like they've done their job and they can.
Win-win. Nice. You're a pro. No, no, it's important. Yeah, it really is. So I know we've spoken before, but I've forgotten now because you said you've been freelancing this time for 8 years. How long have you been writing and editing? Because that's how you describe yourself, right? As a writer and editor.
I didn't know how else to describe myself. I mean, I have used content consultant, content
Ooh,
creative.
consultant feels nice. Feels high end.
It feels nice, but it also feels like, am I?
Oh, okay.
I did it during IR35 for a while because I wanted to be. I can't remember which it was now. I wanted to be outside IR35, so I called myself a consultant, so people were more
Yeah.
comfortable with hiring me. But anyway, the question was how long have I been doing it? So I got my first magazine job 24 years ago, 2000. No, 2001 actually, 2023 was.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was in women's magazines and teen magazines for about 7 years. Then I I got a job at Save Children in 2008. I was there for 8.5 years. And then I went freelance, and now I'm in the same. Went freelance in magazines for a while, and I was freelancing around magazines, and then I moved to Save Children, and
Okay. Right, got you. Do you miss the world of magazines? Good. Next
then.
question.
You know what? When I came into
It is what
magazine,
it is.
so lucky. I was so lucky, and I worked with some wonderful people, and I interviewed some incredible people because I was doing true life interviews with people who'd done these amazing things. including young people, teenagers who were just amazing. I feel very privileged to have been there and done it. When I started in magazines, I got my first editorial assistant job through Office Angels, the agency.
Yes.
It was paid. Now, the time I left magazines, that would never happen. The whole industry at that time was being propped up by free turns.
Yeah.
This is the problem with so many books, magazines, that pay is low or it's non-existent, and so the only people doing those jobs are the jobs who can afford to work for free.
It was the same. I graduated in photography, and so some friends would go down to London because that was the dream. If you live up north, you've got to go down. It's the epicenter of the world, and they would do the same thing, work in galleries for free, or those that could stay with family. And it's like, oh, do you know, it's rough. But yeah, not good.
Isn't it, in those worlds, especially with art and stuff, because I did an art history degree and I was working in art galleries for a while as well before I went into magazines, and world feels so moneyed.
Yeah.
Yet the people trying to come into it and work in it,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
there's two sides of the same coin, because the people who are coming into it younger in that wealthy world, because they can afford to work for a pittance or work for free. They must come from a wealthy world to be able to.
Yeah.
Like to get in the entrance, you have to be part of the world already, in a sense.
I have to admit, I don't really know much about like the arts world at the moment. Like, I would hope that there's initiatives in place to sort of bring in more diversity, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I hope so.
I'm literally talking about 25 years ago.
Yeah. But no, I remember too. So when because I'm thinking about, was it Save the Children you worked with? Yeah. Are you still, in my head, when I think about the work that you're doing? You just talked about the teaching and the education. I think about some really like hard hitting stuff. Is that still like the world that you're working in, and you have projects in, or is it what's than that? Because I was thinking, God, she has to deal with some, talking about something completely not non-meaningful, but not quite as hard hitting as that. And I just wondered, is that like your reality at the moment, or does it depend?
It comes and goes. So a lot of emergency. So when I was in house at Save the Children, we had our kind of reactive schedule and our proactive schedule that we were constantly working on emergency responses at the same time as our sort of day-to-day work. So whenever there was a conflict kicked off or a earthquake happened, we would have to quickly juggle all our resources and jump on it. And it was the tough. You have to outside it slightly, but also you do need to be feeling it, because you need to be feeling it for your audience and being in those feelings for your audience in order to try and inspire them into action. It's tricky to strike that balance between awfulness of it and the possibility of being able to do something about it, the hope and the possibility of being able to do something about it. And that is all, yes.
Yeah.
But I would say, as a freelancer now, I'm not always on the nub of everything that comes in, because quite often your in-house staff are the people that jump on that first. And then the stuff that you're supposed to be working on is easier to give out to a freelancer, usually.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense.
Depends on how your relationship with, if the client knows you well enough to be able to go, oh, there's been a flood, can you quickly this fundraising out? I do get that.
Yeah, you're in it.
You get that kind of stuff as well, but I think less it happens less for me as a freelancer.
Yeah.
And also when I worked in house, I was working a lot on the mass mass audience comms, general public comms, fundraising and campaign comms, because I had a policy communications editor in my team who was doing the grown-up stuff, like, you know, editing the big chunky policy reports.
Okay.
This is like equivalent of a white paper, but like, I don't really
Yeah.
know. But
Sounds good.
all of that kind of is. But now that I'm freelance, I'm doing more of that stuff, and I actually quite like delving into all of the kind of things properly, work behind the scenes, and the logistics of it all.
Do
That's
you?
the joy of, I actually do. The sectors that I care about, I do.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So is there like in your mind, are there like dream projects that you would love to work on, like the things that you have in sight, you're like, oh actually no, I'd love to get stuck into that?
Yes and no. One of the things that I love about freelancing is you never know what's coming.
Mm.
Sometimes it's just really nice to be surprised all the time. Oh,
Yeah.
do that. Okay, yeah, do that.
Yeah.
I do think having worked on some deeper, more sort of systemic stuff, I'd like to do more of that. I'd like to work with some think tanks. So
Mm.
really, because I think the world needs some fundamental changes at like really
Yeah.
deep level
Mm-hmm.
doing. Kind of sitting about at the edges of it is not satisfying enough. It's like, no, we
Mm-hmm.
need to properly break things down and throw things out and start over and think of new ways of
Yeah.
doing things and new ways of thinking. So I would love to go into
Mm.
that space a bit more. How about you? Are you structured about it? Do you have like, I want to go after these kind of clients, or I have these kind of jobs?
No, is the short answer. Like I'm the most unstructured person. That's just one of my questions. I was like, help me be organised. But no, I don't have. If I need to do business development, like I will then like try and think, strategically about like, who might have had funding and who might need to sort of elevate their voice and who might want access to thought leadership stuff. So I'll do that. But no, I do like the variety. It does mean that I could be more efficient because I think, say, you just write 800-word thought leadership articles for agency owners, you get into the pattern, you know how you quickly can turn this around. Whereas, if you're going from like, I don't know, white paper to social media content to emails, it's sort of there's a bit of a context switch, and especially if you're going between industries, like it's a little nuts. But no, I don't. I don't have like a list of like I would love to work with these 5 clients. What I found is that, like, especially with the ghostwriting stuff, is that when having conversations like this, like, just if I like their energy and I like their product or service, like, we'll probably work together. Plus, like I said, there's that third part where there's something really complicated and really nuanced. I'm like, do you know what? Actually, there'd be a bit better fit here, and that's not me. But yeah, no, I do like the variety, even though it's a little bit maddening sometimes.
That's because you're getting interested in something and then it's finished and you're moving on to the next thing. Or what's maddening? What are the things that you about it?
Yeah, I think just the moving from one thing, just maddening is probably the wrong word. Just changing into something completely different. You're like, okay, right, completely different audience, completely different product, completely different mechanism. But I also think I would go mad if I was just writing emails. So like I see why there's a benefit as a freelancer to doing one type of thing because I think you're more easily referable. But also I just hate my life. So
Oh.
it's all good. So
Thinking,
go on, you go.
talking about how quiet it is at the moment, does it make you
Mm-hmm.
question whether freelance is like a viable long-term thing, or are we just in a dark bit of the tunnel at the moment, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. Yeah, I think about that all the time. I don't know. I don't think so. I do think that, and I won't ever, shit on AI because I use it every day. But I do think that the world has changed massively. Like I've got a friend who wants to talk to me about freelance writing next week, and I've already said to her like happy to chat ideas, but it's not a great time. Like if I was starting now, I wouldn't get into copywriting now. I just wouldn't. So that's sort of why I pivoted a little bit to ghostwriting because I saw actually there's a moment here where people are wanting to write more online. They want to increase their reputation, and so there's a sort of repositioning here that actually that they cross over copywriting and ghostwriting. It's effectively writing for one person versus writing for a brand. So that's helped a bit. And also, from being really honest, like stuff like this, I'm just trying to learn new skills and have more conversations so that like perhaps more opportunities will come my way. And not as in like direct leads from like a podcast, but just who might see you and who you might have a conversation with, if that makes sense.
It's looking for little bits of inspiration, isn't it? Every chat is like, oh yeah, I thought of that thing, or it just sparks new things in your brain, doesn't it?
Mm,
I think it's not, you can't be inspired in a bubble all the time, because it's
yeah.
just, you need to, God, it's such a twatty way of saying it, but you need to bounce off other people, don't you? And that's what it
It's
is.
true. It's a real thing though. Yeah.
Each other and challenging each other, and just having a chat with a designer friend of mine the other day, and we were talking about how much we missed working on like coming up with ideas as a design
Mm,
writer team, because neither of
yeah.
us really feels like we're working that as much as we used to, because we were in house together. But that debate you see crop up every now and again, what comes first, design or copy? And it's kind of like, well, no, if it's a policy report, then copy, obviously,
Hmm,
because
hmm.
it's just
Yeah.
putting it into like a beautiful container. Sorry, that's very offensive to designers. If it's a concept,
Mm,
then it has to be both at the same time, and you've got to be
hmm.
starting with. So the designer needs to be able to say, if I did something like this visually, how would you work it with the words? Or the copywriter goes, if I just gave you this, what would you do? Or you have an idea that's like dependent on both
Mm,
things. Like this designer and I worked on because we did a scratch card, and it was a handout that was supposed to convey um, the education lottery that children are in, depending on where they are in the country and how good the education system is in that part of the country. And so
hmm.
we made a scratch card, and I don't think we ever would have, like, if I was working as a copywriter, I probably wouldn't have come up with that idea, because you can't just send that to a designer and then go, here you go. The
Yeah.
designer has to be in on it, otherwise they'd be like, what are you forcing me to do?
From the start. Yeah.
Like, there was another project we worked on where all the copy was just a word cloud of things that were creating a mood, and it was
Hmm,
going on a beautiful photo.
hmm,
And the designer was putting the words in the photo together, the way that
hmm.
created this mood. But without that collaboration at the start, I would never just send a word. I would never just
No.
file a word cloud. What kind of lazy copywriter is this? It could have been AI. It could have been AI. Generate the word cloud before we had it. This is years ago, but it could.
Yeah.
But it took the humans to come up with the idea, and then I could have said,
Hmm.
make some words out of that, or
Yeah.
you know, the idea
100%.
is not necessarily. I don't know if the idea has to exist first. Obviously,
Yeah. I think so. But I'd never had that experience, and I sort of like it feels like so nostalgic, almost like almost Madman era, which is ridiculous. I know because I know this is like 5 years ago. Well, no, I'm still in agencies. Yeah, I never really had that sort of back and forth. It's but I know what you mean. That sounds ideal. But I think I don't know about you though. I find myself consuming when you talk about like space to be creative. I have to stop myself consuming so much content. Like I could quite easily be like washing the dishes, listening to a podcast, something in the shower, listening to something like just filling my brain with stuff because I just love to learn. And actually, in doing so, you just don't have any space to be creative. It's just input all the time. Do you find yourself sort of consuming so much that it's hard to produce? Or
I do. I exactly what you mean by that, and I think it's a really difficult balance to get. I've been doing it quite a lot with my writing, and it's just this instance, it's just a way of me procrastinating, really, because I'll say to myself, well, I can't be a writer, I can't write books if I don't read books. And the more different styles and genres of books that I read, that's going to feed my own writing, right? And that's an excuse to sit down and read instead of writing.
so, what's the writing book bit? That sounds fascinating.
Well, I'm writing some children's books. So I've had a couple of years and years ago when I worked in magazines, I had a couple of children's books published. Then I moved sector and it was intense. It was intense sector work, and I got pregnant and I had some twins. And life just
that'll do it.
too distracting.
Yeah.
So I've been coming back to it very, very painfully slowly over the last few years of freelancing, like in my quiet freelancing.
Okay.
Between jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's like there's so much content everywhere, so much going on everywhere, and we've got a global view of it all in a way that we didn't used to have. And it's so noisy that your brain needs a bit of quiet to come up with an idea, but also there's that fear there that whatever I think of is never going to be an original idea because obviously someone else has thought of it before. So there's that sense like I just can't come up with anything original. And you go down all these rabbit holes of like, oh, that's an interesting idea. And then you'll just Google it to see if someone else has done the same thing. And obviously they have. And then so every idea is a dead end. But I think it kind of, yeah, you have to try and get a bit of perspective somehow. I mean, it's a bit like, if you look at J.K. Rowling, for instance, I'll get into a conversation about that. But that was not the first book about wizards and witches, right? It wasn't an original idea. Did it in a way that no one else had done it. I think it's the same with ideas when you're coming up with ideas, not to stress if someone else has had the idea, but why does it work for this person that you're working for right at this moment? What does it say about what they're doing at this moment? And even if there is someone else doing the same thing, they're not necessarily going to be talking to the same people. So
yeah, no, I totally, and also it won't stop other people as well. You know, there'll be other people out there who aren't as smart as you, who haven't got as much experience as you, that will just do the thing. And it's like, well, they're not more worthy. They're not 100 IQ points smart. You know, like, it's why them and not me, I suppose I sometimes think. I also heard this thing recently that I thought was interesting. It was to do with psychological safety. This marketing guru was talking about sometimes if you feel exposed, and there's not that whole like fear of success and all that sort of stuff, but if you feel like you're going to be exposed in a way that you're not psychologically comfortable with, then you won't do the thing. So, for example, if someone, you know, has to go and do this, be a speaker on stage, and that's really not okay with them, they might try and self-sabotage, they might do all the things that sort of get in their way. And often we sort of stay in that place where we feel safe, and there's ways around that. But I was like, oh, that is interesting, because there's things that I've tried to launch and then just be like, oh, and I'm like, why have I done that? Because actually, I think there's something still there. And I think that can sometimes come into play. I mean, I'm obviously paraphrasing. I'm not a psychologist, probably slaughtering that, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I think if you're someone who is kind of confident on an alpha level, or you're not, or you're an overthinker, is that I saw a meme which is like, the secret to stop worrying about doing the thing is to do the thing. And you know, when you're avoiding, but it is that sense of like, oh, I can't possibly do that, it's too huge. And then you finally do it and you think, well, that wasn't huge at all. Nobody cares except me. Why was I imagining it was so huge? It was going to take me forever, and actually it only took me a day. Because everything seems so big before you're in it, doesn't it? It seems intimidating and big, and then you get there and it's like, actually,
totally,
I can do it.
And then you're like, yeah, exactly, and that's the thing, isn't it? Then you do the thing, you're like, I'm the kind of person that does things. Like, I can sort of almost trust myself.
Yeah, it's like that whole thing of like, we can do hard things. It's like, you need to, before you believe that, you need to have done a certain number of things and got through it. So it's a bit chicken and egg in that way, that it's a bit like, what experience have you got? Well, give me a job and I'll get some experience. Do hard things. Well, I need to do some hard things, and then I'll believe Sometimes we need someone with us, don't we? And I think it is more people working their own, less in teams. I think that becomes a bigger thing as well, because you don't have someone else. You don't have other people there.
Yeah.
You can see what other people are doing, but it's much easier for them to show you their show reel, isn't it? Whereas if you're
Mm.
together in real life, you're seeing their B-roll as well.
Have you had that thing? I had this recently, and where I looked up to someone. It's almost like, when you have like sort of like online crushes, you're like, oh, they're so cool, da 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 da. And then either you meet them, or I don't know, you just realize that actually they're not this amazing person. It's not like that meeting your hero thing. Like, it's just like they're just normal. And actually, I don't know whether it's because your perspective shifted, you've got better or whatever, but it's like, oh, okay, actually, this person who I thought was the shit is actually just normal.
Because we all are.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
people.
yeah.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I am quite a spongy person, like quite an absorbent
Mm,
person.
mm-hmm.
Like, I'll get really excited about new people and excited about new things, and I'll be like hanging on their every word and thinking, oh yeah, they're amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit like microcosms of life, where
Mm.
when you're young, you think, this is amazing, or my life's going to be like this, or I just need to get
Mm.
there. And then you kind of slowly, year by year, in a sort of harder and harder way, realize that there's no perfect, there's no destination. Everyone's just
Yeah.
picking it up. All going to feel crap sometimes, and we're all going to feel great
Mm.
sometimes, and that's how you want it. Because if you felt great all the time, you would stop noticing that you felt great, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I have to say that is what I enjoy about LinkedIn, especially these days. Weird segue, but like for years, it was always it's like this place that everyone was so impressive and so infallible, and it was like we are professional people here and we just kick ass. And now it's completely different. Now, whether you like it or not, I don't know, but like it just is a more honest, less impressive place, and I just think that's so much less exhausting. So it lets us off the hook of it, doesn't it? Just to be normal, human.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is much better than it was. Although I think there was a weird golden moment just when it was starting to, like, no, Twitter was just starting to get people getting pissed off with Twitter.
Yeah, yeah.
And LinkedIn sort of became like, and also it was around the time that Facebook feeds stopped being people that you knew and started being just adverts for stuff.
Yeah.
And it sort of felt like, oh, LinkedIn's like the new Facebook now,
Mm, hmm.
and people are talking to each other like people.
Hmm.
And there was a golden moment for maybe a year,
Hmm.
and then I feel like it went back a little bit to
And now
like
do you hate it?
everybody. I don't hate it, but I do find it a little bit exhausting sometimes. That feels like a room full of people with megaphones,
Hmm.
not listening as well as they are.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, I hear that. People are like, I have content. I have something to say.
It is a little bit. Look at my content.
Mm.
Could it not be? There's no way around that because that's what it is. But
Yeah, no, I hear that. And I hear that as someone who writes content for people on LinkedIn that follows, well, I say a certain format. So, like, we all know that, like, when you write a post on LinkedIn, like, the hook has to be fairly short and you've got to have the space for the see more and da 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 da. So there's ways that, we can get, like, more reach. But there is also a way to do it where you just feel human and not templated. Because I think there's a lot of templates out there at the moment that people are using to try and get a viral post. And so you'll see it with the certain little arrows and the bullet points, and like I've done them, and sometimes because they do, like, annoyingly they do work. Like if I test a post that I've written that is just a block of text that hasn't got a very compelling hook, they're just like free form. I mean, I'll have some people who are like my mates and who know and like me who might comment, but then if I post the same thing and format it in a way that I know will do better, it will always do better. So you do sort of have to play the game a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's still a load of nonsense out there. But I
there's
guess that's
enough
social media.
for consuming. I think that's the thing that I'm feeling a little bit
It's
like
not enough.
more. Yeah, so people go on there to put their content on there, but then they're not necessarily staying to look around and like and interact. And if it gets to the point where or have more people there putting content on than you have people engaging with the content?
I don't think so. I think you can sometimes feel like that because it's like, when you're friends just with marketers and you're like, everybody's in marketing. And you're like, oh no, not everyone knows what a CTA is. No, because I see the people that I work with have not posted for years and they've consumed and they bought and they and now they want to become part of that sort of content creation piece. So, but yeah, there is loads of it now. But no, I don't think that's necessarily true. But yeah, it is the only social media I do. Do you have any other like platforms you enjoy?
Really, no.
Yeah, fair.
It's a problem. It's a problem. I've been thinking, like you have, a little bit more sort of dipping a little bit into the idea of getting a job, and so many of them are involved managing social media, and I feel like I've lost touch with it a little bit because I write content for social. Don't get me wrong, but I don't manage the channels like I used to. And when
Okay.
I started doing that, it was in that really short place of time where people were doing Google Plus. Do you remember Google Plus? You're probably
Probably should, but I don't.
a bit younger than me, and it was before you were working.
No, it rings a bell, but I can't. Yeah.
I mean, when I was working in teen magazines, where they were still using MySpace. Anyway, I'm making myself sound like a relic. One was in a band, and their band was on MySpace, and
Yeah. I had Skilo, I wish, as my.
good.
Sorry, as you were.
Yeah, no, I don't want to be that guy who's like disillusioned with social media, but I am a little bit.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. It's exhausting.
Feels like we're in a. It feels like we're in a flux place moment, and I'm interested
Mm.
to see what comes. I think I've got wind of a few community spaces that are a little bit more like Facebook felt like when it was good.
Okay.
The more you can have your own
Mm-hmm.
community online, and
Mm-hmm.
in the kind of charity, not the lines are blurring a little bit between sort of charity and community interest companies, and
Okay. Yeah.
you know, the lines. I like the way the lines are blurring now between business and doing good. I think it's really good. I think a lot of the mood around some of those kind of activities is into local communities more and getting back into people caring about their communities and the people around them. And there's a few things that I cannot remember any of the names of, so it's useless me talking about them. But there's a few little things, or there's one or two um, tools that people are using to bring those communities together online, but there's still real communities that exist. But they can
Hmm.
know each other, and I suppose similar to the way that people are using WhatsApp, um, but more.
That does sound interesting.
I think there's interesting things happening. I think there's
Hmm.
interesting things coming, but at the moment I feel in a bit of a like space in the middle where
Yeah.
I'm
And you
waiting.
have to. Yeah. You have to listen to that, don't you? Otherwise, you're just pushing through and just yeah. You have to enjoy our lives. So, what do you think book wise? Because I've still got this. I'm still curious to know more. What do you think what stage is it at, and what do you think it'll take to get it over the line? I'm not trying to
I'm
therapize you. Yeah.
writing at the moment. Well, so I'm writing two different children's books, and like I've started fiddling with an adult one, which weirdly has those themes of like getting really excited about a person and then realizing that they're actually just human and being really
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
so it's really interesting that you brought that up. But anyway, so I'm working on two different children's books, and one I'm about 20,000 words into, and the other one I'm about 30,000 words into. 30,000 word one, I thought I'd finished it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, yes, I finished it. Then I realised you can't end it there. Being ridiculous, and you're lying to yourself. Actually,
Okay.
where you are is the end of the third act.
Okay.
You need to write end of second act. There, if you're looking at the three act structure,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm the end of the second act where all of and if the crap has just happened, all of the shit has hit the fan, right? And then I was like, yeah, done.
To
And I was
finish,
like,
see
no,
ya.
no, 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 no. I need the third act to like solve it.
Mm.
Now I thought I was finished it, but then I admitted to myself that I wasn't finished it, and now I'm back in it, and I think I've got another probably 20,000 words to.
Yay! I mean, good that you had the realization because it'll be a better book for it by the sounds of it. But I mean, sure, either way it'd be great. But yeah, but you're a bit like, damn it, why couldn't that have been it?
Yeah. I mean, it is hard, and I've been fiddling with it in between things for so long that I'm not in habits with it. You know, I can get on with client work, no problem, because
Yeah, of
I am
course.
in my structure with it and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
bills, and you've got other people to answer to, and you know, but with
Mm.
just will sneakily wander off and be plus on.
Yeah. That was actually one of my questions, which was like, what's your favorite procrastination flavor of procrastination?
Well, I
I
mean,
think you might have answered it with the books, though.
yeah, I'm afraid I'm a bit of a TV addict, but I this is a problem that I'm having at the moment because usually I'm very good at keeping TV out of my day.
Hmm.
TV is for evenings and weekends. Every now and again, I'll get hooked on some trash. I'm not that I can't really watch the evenings and weekends because I won't have it on. My kids won't have it
God, what is it?
on. And
I'm gonna need to know, Laura. We're not leaving it here.
and so I'll have to like while I'm making a sandwich at lunchtime, I'll like have it on my phone there with my headphones in and I'll be watching it on my phone while I'm making a sandwich. So I'm totally addicted to Grey's Anatomy because I'd never seen it before. And we got Disney Plus and I saw it. I was like, oh, I've never seen
Okay.
that. And I've started watching it.
It's a commitment. I've not. Yeah.
Too much of a commitment. I've made a major mistake. I think my fellow
Yeah.
characters just left, so I think I'm going to ease off now.
Yeah.
It happened to coincide with slow period in work, and so I thought, oh well, I've just finished that project. I'll have a couple of days off, watch some
On
TV.
some grace.
I've watched worse trash.
Yeah, 100%. I think like it's pretty, widely popular, isn't it? What a thing
It's
to
very
say. But yeah, 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 yeah. But I don't know how many, like 50, 30 series. I don't know. Not series, seasons.
We're on season 21. I think they're just making it. It's still
God.
going.
And so I can't. I mean, Andre's like the ultimate commitment, and he's also like anti-trash. He's the culture lord. I don't know if I'd describe him as a way, but he doesn't like trashy TV. And so I can't be like, hey, how do you feel about 21 series of this? Like, he'd just not go for that. But I
My
believe it's very
husband's
good.
exactly the same, and his name is Andrew.
His name's Andre.
Wait, what were you saying? You said
And Andre, my husband, you're part.
Andrew. My husband is.
Andrew. I was like, what are the chances? Okay.
Okay, so anyway, but I do like the good shows. Like the good shows are great. Like Better Call Saul, one of the best shows ever.
Yeah, the good shows.
Watch the good shows together.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Sometimes just want a bit of trash. I will go quite low. I'll sink quite low with the trash.
Yeah, okay.
Charmed, Ghost Whisperer, or just like proper.
Okay, like almost terrestrial TV trash, not Netflix trash, like selling Sunset.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, right. I feel like I feel like I've taken you to the pits of trashy TV. Thank you so much for today. Is there anything that you want to? I know this hasn't really been a traditional podcast format. Is there anything that you want to mention or share? Or I can obviously put my links in when we go, viral on YouTube.
It's particularly, I mean, we touched a little bit on jobs and
Mm.
stuff, and being a bit torn between freelancing and jobbing.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got a bit of a bee in my bonnet at the moment about how imaginative people are when they're recruiting, about how they might divide roles up between people and do
Okay.
time flexible working. So that's something that I've been thinking about a lot in like systems and tools and processes to help people who are recruiting, help recruiters, but also people in-house who are recruiting, to divide up their objectives that they want to achieve and like allocate them differently to people, because there's so many people now who I think want to work, and it's not just parents, it's people who are recovering from health problems, or people who are writing books, or people who are making music in their spare time and want
Yeah, yeah.
to work. So, and it doesn't have to mean that there's like a half a week and then a half a week and then a messy handover in the middle.
Mm.
It can be two people working across the week, fewer hours, and you've got two people ticking all your boxes. Then you can tick off more bills. You can get your impossible job description. You can actually fill it because you're
Yeah,
using two people instead of one,
they
and they can
exist.
cover each other's
Yeah.
holidays. And I just think there's so much
Hmm.
potential there if we could do it differently. So I just wanted to just throw that in there because it's something that's really in my mind at the moment. That
And what might that look like? Like a service that you offer people, let me help you sort of divide and create something that's enticing for people that will help
yeah, I
lots of people.
mean, I
Yeah.
hate to say
Mm. Yeah,
because
that's
it's
interesting.
like the climate impact is something that bothers me about AI, but you could do it with AI, chunking up job descriptions into different classifications of
Hmm.
tasks that you need doing, or it could be, you can get recruitment tools that do blind recruiting, so you answer questions, but they can't see your name.
Yeah.
It could be a tool like that where you're matching people up who want to job share, and you're matching those
Mm.
people up, and they, in the process of recruiting, you know.
Love that.
Yeah, it could be. I think the world needs more tools to help new ways of working.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What people need now.
Mm. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'm into it. Amazing. So what's on for the rest of this afternoon? Just some Grey's Anatomy and you should never mention that.
I
No,
have
some
been doing quite
what
well with my
reports.
writing today, so I think I'm going to go back to one of my books and do a little bit more, and then it's
Nice.
how far are we from beer o'clock?
Yeah,
3 hours from beer o'clock.
yeah, yeah. Nice. Enjoy it. Well, thank you so much. It's been so lovely to catch up.
For having me, it's been lovely to see you.